Welcome. Thanks for coming and visiting my YouTube videos. Today we're going to be talking about low sodium diet. Now, if you haven't had a chance, you should look back at my other video about how to manage hypertension that included JNC8 as well as the SPRINT trial and more evidence-based medicine. So this will be a continuation from that last talk. And so we'll go ahead and get started on this. And so today what I want to do is to address certain questions about low sodium as far as why sodium is a problem. So is sodium really that bad for me? How big is the problem? Is it really something that I should consider as a patient? And how much sodium should I be getting? As well as patients who say that they don't add any salt to their diet, but yet they are getting sodium in other forms besides the salt shaker. Now, and also we'll talk about the foods that are good and bad in regards to blood pressure. Now, the consequences of a high sodium diet really has to do with blood pressure. And so when you look at the consequences of blood pressure, about 47% of coronary artery disease can be attributed to high blood pressure. Now, understand that blood pressure is affected not only by diet, but also by genetics, alcohol use, being obese, and other aspects as well. Now, sodium reduction can reduce cardiovascular events by about 25 to 30%. And if you look at stroke rates, about 54% of strokes are attributed to high blood pressure. And amongst all the different factors out there, diet is a contributing factor that can be changed and can reduce quite a bit the rates of adverse events. So how big is the problem in our country? So the average sodium consumption of an American is about 3,600 milligrams per day, which is way in excess than what's recommended. And reducing salt intake in the general population to about just by 3 grams per day can prevent 44,000 to 92,000 deaths per year and reduce the healthcare costs by $10 to $24 billion annually just by decreasing the amount of sodium intake just by 600 milligrams. So this does not even address the amount of cost, or I'll say how much is saved if we actually go all the way down to the recommendation of 1,500 milligrams per day. So one reason to really focus on limiting the amount of sodium that's consumed is that it actually helps with the medications that we use for our patients and can actually enhance the response to most blood pressure medicines. Outside of the already beneficial effect of reducing blood pressure, there's an additive effect on making medications more effective. So really you're getting a lot more for your money when it comes to getting your medicines. And also side effects of blood pressure medications, one of them can be hypokalemia, specifically from the loop diuretics or the thiazide diuretics. And so using a low sodium diet can actually minimize some of the effects of hypokalemia. And also reducing sodium intake can also reduce urinary protein excretion in CKD and minimize the complications from CKD, which includes progressions to end-stage renal failure. So who are the people that really benefit above most? So the first group by far is going to be African Americans. If they are able to control their sodium intake, then they, compared to a lot of other demographics, can actually benefit really the most. Other people include middle and older age persons, as well as diabetics and those who have chronic kidney disease. And so the major society recommendations, so the WHO in 2013 recommended around less than 2,000 milligrams per day of sodium, and also the US dietary guidelines say about less than 2,300. The AHA and the ACC recommended actually less than 1,500 milligrams per day, and that's actually what I personally recommend to my patients. The kidney organization, the KDIGO, recommends about less than 2,000 milligrams per day in those who do have chronic kidney disease but do not have dialysis. But for me, I pick about less than 1,500 milligrams per day. But doctor, I don't add any salts to my food, and that's oftentimes what I'll hear. And so the thing is that about 80% of sodium intake in the United States comes not from food that patients add to their food, not from salt shakers, but actually from restaurants and also from packaged foods. And so if you look at this graph, about 4% is found in food naturally, about 13% is added while eating or cooking, 13% found in restaurants, and an overwhelming amount of sodium, 68%, comes from processed foods from the grocery store. So if a patient actually gets rid of their salt shaker, majority of their sodium is still being consumed. And so the main problem is really processed foods as well as restaurants. So packaged foods. So prepared frozen meals, canned foods, pickled foods, snack foods, lunch meats, cheese, condiments, sausage, dressings, breads. So the list goes on, as well as sodas, that even diet soda. So if it comes out of a bag, if it doesn't look like the original food that grew out of the ground or from the tree, and if it's been processed and in any way, then it's potentially a source of high sodium. So how can somebody cut back? Well, first of all, you can actually start reading the sodium content on the back of each package. It's very easy to do. Definitely don't touch the salt shaker. 1 teaspoon of salt has about 2,300 milligrams of sodium, which is just 1 day's worth of sodium. And also, there's a lot of misconceptions in the general public thinking that, sea salt is better for you. And I'm not sure exactly why, because it comes from the ocean versus somewhere else that somehow is supposed to be better for you. So the source of sodium is still basically not important. The outcome is the same, which is increased blood pressure. So I don't recommend sea salt or any other salt substitutes. Avoid drinking softened water. So apparently whenever the exchange of ions occurs with drinking water, they substitute calcium for sodium. So they're actually putting sodium within the drinking water if it's softened. And also choose fresh fruits and vegetables. And that, I think that is the message that I tell my patients, is saying that vegetables and fruits, it looks very similar in basically the way it came out of the ground or from a tree. But as soon as some company changes the way it looks and puts it in a package, regardless of what it says on the front, you really need to look on the back of what you're consuming. What I like to do is instead of using salt, I try to use herbs instead when I try to cook. And so thyme, oregano, basil, and as well as garlic and lemon juice, using those ingredients can actually minimize the amount of salt that's required to produce flavor. And so what I do is that I have an herb garden in my backyard. I cut a few leaves of basil and thyme, and I use that to cook, as well as rosemary. And so there's a lot of information online as far as how herbs can go with food to actually help the flavor without actually increasing the amount of sodium that you're consuming. And also the big thing is also telling your waiter to cut back on the sodium. And I don't necessarily see a whole lot of that happening in restaurants. And so there's this type of relaxed environment, kickback, and very much of like being unaware of what is being consumed. And so telling the waiter, hey, can you get like a salt-free chips for us? Do you have a low sodium type of menu? And a lot of the chain restaurants, if they're good, they'll actually will provide a menu with options for low sodium. And if they're moderately good, then they'll direct you to a website, and they'll tell you, hey, go on the website, you can find a low sodium option. Bad restaurants will say like, well, I don't know. So in that case, you probably just don't need to be going there at all. Okay, so how to read nutritional labels. There's so much extraneous information on a food label that it gets really daunting. And so the thing that I have highlighted here is the sodium. And for what I recommend is going to be less than 400 milligrams per serving. And if somebody can't remember that, then you can tell them, well, 20% of your daily consumption per serving, and only one serving is be sure to make sure it's only one serving. So if you notice here, this has 850 milligrams, which is way more than the recommended 400, and you look at the amount of servings, so it's 2 servings. So that's double than what you're actually getting. So that's going to be about 1,700 milligrams, and that is about all the sodium that you can actually consume for the whole day. And so, and I doubt that somebody's just going to eat soup and that's it for the whole day. All right, so what are some of the common culprits within food? So breads, processed breads, specifically white breads, are notoriously high in sodium. Cheese, so everything besides, so Swiss and mozzarella are actually relatively low in sodium, so that actually can be helpful. So pickles are very high in sodium. Deli meats are high in sodium. Chips are high in sodium. Now, deli meats, if you look carefully at the grocery store and the label, they might have low sodium options, as well as chips might have. I mean, I think there might be like one package amongst a sea of chips that actually has low sodium option, and as well as condiments such as mustard. And canned soups are notoriously bad. So when you look at these common culprits, I mean, what comes to mind is the traditional American lunch. So just a deli meat, cheese, bread with a can of soup. I mean, that's like more sodium than you need for an entire day, and then you're not done eating. And so I tell my patients that if you can modify what you eat for lunch, that can greatly reduce what you your amount of sodium you have per day, and potentially improve your blood pressure. So I like to, so this guy, I mean, he's the picture of health, advertised Subway, lost, I don't know how much weight he lost. And ever since then patients have associated with Subway sandwiches for health. But if you look at what they're selling you, I mean, like deli meat, cheese, pickles, mustard, bread. I mean, this is like, might as well eat a big rock of salt, to be honest with you. And so, but Dr. Sanchez, I eat healthy. I understand why I have high blood pressure. And so what does a sandwich supposed to look like? Well, a low sodium sandwich kind of looks like this. I mean, it's not the traditional sandwich. And so if somebody has a hard time, like, deciding, say, hey, well, I can't eat that, then oftentimes I tell them, like, look, there are some other, maybe some box meals that are on the approved list that I have, and I'll show you some, that those are some low sodium options as well as low calorie that actually might be helpful. And so, but resorting to sandwiches is not the way to actually lose weight. A little bit about the DASH diet. Now, the DASH diet is not actually a low sodium diet. The DASH diet is what we've been all taught in medical school as far as a way to reduce blood pressure. So, which consists about 4 to 5 servings of fruits, 45 servings of vegetables, 2 to 3 servings of low-fat dairy, and then less than 25% of dietary intake from fat. But DASH diet actually doesn't. I mean, yes, it works, but it doesn't actually address the sodium issue. So what I actually recommend is the DASH and low sodium diet. And so I use this picture. This is the Choose My Plate diagram. It comes from some department in the government. And so they actually recommend over half of your intake should be from fruits and vegetables. And I actually will show patients this in addition to eating a high plant-based diet, low processed foods. I incorporate also a low sodium diet as well, and that's very helpful. So here's just another example. They actually sell these plates, by the way, and for those patients who want to give it a try and be a little more strict, they can try to go online and purchase some of these plates that help people show the actual proportion of foods they should be consuming. Now, what I do is I actually will draw out the little plate, and I kind of modify it a little bit on the plate. And I really believe that half the plate should be vegetables, and then the fruits should be throughout the day just snacked on. And so where we have a low meat consumption, mainly fish, chicken, and turkey, and then really red meat maybe once every 2 weeks, and then substituting wheat or whole grain in place of processed white bread. Now, there's the Ezekiel bread, which is the lowest sodium, but to me, I think it tastes awful. But I think that is probably the best bread, is the Ezekiel bread. Now, also on here, it says to cut out a lot of processed foods, soda, sweet tea, cookies, cakes, pies, ice creams included as well, but bacon, fried foods, sausage, and on here it says to cut out salt and use herbs instead. And then really cheese, so Swiss and mozzarella are good substitutes for cheese. Try to eliminate butter, oil, use olive oil, and really for snacks, doing fruits and nuts that are salt-free. And so generally speaking, I think that almonds and walnuts that are natural with no sodium is going to be the best way to do this. And so I'll actually write this out for my patients. I got smart and I made copies, so now I can just give copies out to patients. Now, you heard me talking about if having a healthy sandwich, a low-sodium sandwich is too much to stomach, then I actually will direct patients to box meals that are on the approved list. So Healthy Choice is an option, and if you look in the bottom, it actually has less than 500 milligrams of sodium, and I've seen some that are about 360 milligrams of sodium. And so I tell my patients that less than 500, it's okay. Less than 400 is the goal per serving, and using this instead of the sandwich And I actually will consume one of these and think they're fantastic. And so to increase my vegetable consumption, I also will add a bag of vegetables. And I often tell patients that this whole bag is not for 2 or 3 people. This frozen bag of vegetables should be consumed by one person, and really per day. And so I actually try to use this as a personal goal for myself. So I went to the grocery store just to get an idea of like how much it would cost. And so to have the frozen meal that you just saw, as well as the frozen bag of vegetables, which by the way has no sodium at all, so that's why it's fantastic. I mean, the total is going to be $3.89. I mean, I don't know, like a taco at Taco Bell probably costs like $5 or $6. And so this is a lot healthier, and it does require that people get out of the car and go to a grocery store to get it, as opposed to going to a drive-through. But it is a lot better, so I would say that the economical reasons to not eat healthy, I think that there's a smart way to do it that is also economical. So for more information, I've included a link. This link here is a lot of information. It includes high blood pressure as well as menus, different types of ways to cook. And also within the, down in the comments, I've also included information in the description below, not only this website, but also information on specific foods that you can use as substitutes, what are good, what are bad. There's a long list I made from a Word document, and also access to these slides, as well as some other information here. So in summary, less is better, less than 1,500 milligrams per day. Per meal, I recommend about 400 milligrams per meal. Sodium consumption is a public health concern, and sodium lurks in foods that patients will unknowingly consume sodium without knowing it. And I recommend the low sodium plus the DASH diet, which is a vegetable-based diet. So thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day.